What have we heard? Renters' rights bill will kill the buy-to-let market. Interest rates have killed property. I mean, that's pretty dramatic. Serviced accommodation is oversaturated. Yeah, what are you thinking about that? HMOs are dead. They're oversupplied everywhere. Welcome to the Property Mindset Podcast, where I'm Emma Howitt, mentor, investor, and your guide to building wealth, freedom, and personal transformation through property. Property isn't just about bricks and mortar, it's about building the life that you truly desire. And in this space, we don't just talk about strategy, we deep dive into mindset. And this is something I found is often missing in every other industry. But for me, it's been a real game changer in the professional property circles. So today, this is a good one. How to ignore property doom porn and actually succeed in property. So this episode really shows how to stop being paralyzed by the headlines like renters' rights will kill buy to let, HMOs are dead, and instead think like the people who quietly build great businesses through due diligence and action. So let's turn dreams into actions and actions into success. So we've all heard them, haven't we? This, I called it property doom porn. I mean, what have we heard? Renters' rights bill will kill the buy-to-let market. Interest rates have killed property. I mean, that's pretty dramatic. Serviced accommodation is oversaturated. Yeah, what are you thinking about that? HMOs are dead. They're oversupplied everywhere. I really find, and actually this goes back to, I stopped listening to the the BBC news or the TV news years ago. The Renters' Right Acts will kill the buy-to-let market. Interest rates have killed property. I mean, that really is very dramatic, isn't it? Serviced accommodation is oversaturated. HMOs are dead and oversupplied everywhere. I think that I really learned to bypass these crazy headlines quite a number of years ago when I chose to stop listening to conventional news. In our family, we don't call it news, we call it bad news. Because let's be fair, there is a lot of great things happening every day in your town, in our country, in the world. But all we get fed is horrific things. And most of the time, I have to say, it should have an 18 rating. It is not something I want to put my 9-year-old daughter in front of. So I always find that people who really binge on this property is dead content, they're actually the ones who are most afraid and don't get that chance to move forward. They don't buy anything. And it's actually the people who build their own ecosystem. They do their own work. They do their own due diligence, who take the action and actually build their portfolios. And those are the people that people start talking about and seeing. Obviously, let's be fair, doom and gloom and drama gets clicks. And I know, I mean, I do social media and I'm always told you need to make it a bit more dramatic. But honestly, it's just not me. I'm really happy just to build up my following slowly, excuse me, but surely, because I would rather be kind of measured and a bit more boring with the reality than creating this kind of fear amongst people. And I know that sells courses and that's really great. That works for some people. But do you want to be living in this kind of world? It's like these huge peaks and troughs of fear and then excitement and then fear and then excitement. And if you are in that, it's really hard to move forward. Um, there's loads of stuff going on at the moment about the Renters' Rights Bill, and it literally there are words like it's the end of being a landlord, it's the end of buy-to-lets. I mean, let's be fair, let's look at that strategically. That's a ridiculous thing to say. There are still people who are buying deals every day. I've had somebody look round our property yesterday, really interested. They're buying deals. There's, lots of restructuring going on. There's lots of buying, lots of selling, and there's definitely stock. Now, has the stock and the supply changed? Absolutely. I mean, that is life. That is the way I feel. The world evolves, and we either evolve with it or we get left behind. So it's a bit like, writing on a clay, um, like a clay board in the olden days. We don't do that anymore, obviously. We then moved on to paper, and then we moved on to newspapers and magazines. And now I haven't bought a newspaper or a magazine for years. I get my information, well, a lot of it through, AI, Googling. And again, there are other places I go because sometimes they filter the information that I want to receive. But life evolves. And that's what successful people do. They realize that perhaps for a while they did a certain strategy and now they may have to change that. And that's perfectly fine. But as we know, bad news sells. And the actual quote is that bad news sells newspapers, but it doesn't build portfolios. So it's so key that we are able to filter out this sensationalism and then also the real. Because I'm not saying that if something is happening in the property market, we just ignore it. Absolutely not. But what I do is I just wait for things to happen because we've had like the EPC debacle. People were literally selling up entire portfolios about it, and it's still years away, and it could change again, couldn't it? So this is a great anonymous quote that says, ignore the noise and focus on the fundamentals. And I'm going to repeat that again. Ignore the noise and focus on the fundamentals. And this is not a property quote. This is just a general quote. And it works across every single industry. So, what's true behind these headlines? Because let's be fair, none of us are kind of naive. There often isn't smoke without fire, especially if you've got kids. Ow, he hit me. Well, that generally means that, something has happened. But does it mean that it's the end? There are certainly in any business going to be changes, going to be challenges. And it's how we face those challenges that helps us to build either a dying business or a successful business. And this is a law. This is a law of nature. If something isn't growing, it's dying. And that's the same with us as humans, it's the same with animals, it's the same with food, it's the same with businesses. If you're not growing, you're basically dying. So, what about this Renters' Rights Bill? Yes, there are some changes. There's, going to be the end of Section 21, no fault evictions, periodic tenancies, higher standards, timeframes around repair, damp, and mold. I mean, what sounds so bad about that? Let's be fair. Now, I understand, and I'm not saying that this is like, oh, it's all fine. But inherently, if we're really strong in our admin, we're really strong in our processes, and we have really high um, ways of responding to issues in our property, we shouldn't really have any problems. You find a great tenant and they stay for a long time. You keep them happy. And we all know if you are a landlord, there's always going to be things that are going wrong, like our HMO, every single knife and fork has gone missing. I mean, these things happen. Um, and it's just the way or the processes that we have in place. So, who are these going to be an issue for? Because I'm not suggesting that we all just sit around and don't change with these new sort of rules and regulations coming in. But what I would say is it's going to be a higher risk for those who are a bit more new into the area, newbies, or maybe those older landlords who just are beyond wanting to change or a bit more casual and disorganized. So if you know you fall into one of those categories, that doesn't mean you have to fail. That means you just have to find a different solution. Maybe you find a fantastic letting agent, and not all letting agents are the same as not all businesses are the same. So it will require massive due diligence. And I really like this. I found it somewhere. It says, "This isn't the death of buy to let. It's the death of being sloppy." And let's be fair, that is really key. So, with all these things, are there going to be problems? Absolutely. But we will find ways around it. And I love being in our sort of property communities because there's a lot more very clever people than me. And I know they'll find solutions. And so I listen to people who are real action takers, solution finders, and I follow them because I know they will be the ones that will help me, which will give the solutions to any problems that may arise from these issues. So the next one to think about is this huge thing about interest rates. Oh my gosh, it's just not possible to afford property anymore. Well, I know I wouldn't like to mention how old I am, but I'm pretty middle aged. In fact, I'm 50. And when I was younger, people had interest rates of credit card size, 17%. Unbelievable. But we have just had a period of crazy, crazy, unprecedented low interest rates. Okay. But where we are now, they've just gone back up to average, across the time period, basically. So, yes, are there properties that don't work at those interest levels? Of course, because guess what? Not every deal works. If you really do your due diligence, then you'll know if a deal works. And what I often find is when we're really excited to get a deal, get a property over the line, and you've looked at, let's say, 5 or 10, and none of them are stacked up, you're thinking, I've just got to make one of these work. No, don't do that. You've got to not make a deal work. You've got to find a deal that works. So it may be that, you leave an offer on the table and you keep coming back week after week until they drop that extra 10, 20,000 pounds, which makes the deal work. Maybe the area for you and your strategy, maybe that area doesn't work for that strategy. Maybe you need to find your other or your new gold mine area. So there's so many things to look at, but inherently, you have to make sure that your margins are not too thin so that the deal doesn't work. But there are definitely still deals out there. There's definitely still properties moving. There's definitely, a lot of opportunity out there. Is it going to be exactly the same as what you've done before? It might not be. And that can be really scary, can't it? Change can be so scary. But let's really get into that mindset and that mindset frame where change is actually amazing. Change is usually a great opportunity. And at the time, it might seem like a terrible thing. And we're like, oh, but take a deep breath and really think, something good is going to come from this. And just know that that is going to happen. So obviously, you've seen talk to your broker, get really in and understand where the market is going. But there's so many products being launched. There's so many lenders who are still lending on all types of properties and buy to lets. So just keep your eye out. So I know that I've had a few messages, interest rates have killed property. But those people, I sort of say to them, well, how many deals have you been doing your due diligence on? And generally, those people who are talking about interest rates of killed property have not really been doing their due diligence, have not been understanding their area, their strategy, their personal circumstances to see what will work for them. So here's a great quote: nothing can stay the same forever. So you want to make decisions based on sound fundamentals, not emotion. And that is just so key, isn't it? Do not go, oh, I'm going to make this work no matter what. Absolutely not. There are certain things that you have to walk away from. I've had businesses that I've had to walk away from. I loved it, but I had a cake business and it just didn't make any money. The margins were so tiny. I had to walk away from it. It wasn't an emotional decision, it was just a very factual decision. And these are the things we have to do. So another sensationalism line is whether it's serviced accommodation or HMO, totally oversaturated. Well, I can absolutely agree. There are many areas that are totally oversaturated. But guess what? There are other up and coming areas, and those are the areas that I really love. Those towns that are really kind of bursting at the seams. They've got lots of growth, and the growth is happening. It's not just the ones that are saying, yeah, we're going to build some more houses and another bit of road here and a roundabout here. Things are actually happening. And those are the places that are doing really, really well. So, absolutely, some of the towns and cities where they've been really successful in the past, you've just got every new Tom, Dick, and Harry coming in and getting a rent to rent serviced accommodation and wondering why it's not working. And that's why it's so key to make sure that we do our due diligence. Anyone who knows me, I'm so passionate about this that I've written a book on finding your goldmine area for serviced accommodation because I've just saw so many people time and time again rushing into getting a rent to rent or buying a property for serviced accommodation when it was never going to work. And then they kind of blame their management company or whatever it is. Everyone likes to blame someone else, but inherently, all of us need to do our own due diligence. And if you don't know how to do that, just get help. As I say, I've got a book, I've even got a free resource. I'll pop it in the show notes. So it's just really key. So serviced accommodation, it's still a really strong business. There are still lots of people who've got amazing serviced accommodation businesses. They're growing. It might be that they're in an amazing contractor market or incredible tourist locations. And guess what? If they're tourist locations, they might shut in the winter. That might be their business model. I don't know. I'm just sort of throwing some ideas out there. But with the right product, the right area, and the right management and the right demand, and there not being oversaturation, of course, you can have an amazing business. And it's the same with HMOs. Is there still a demand? Are there still people looking for places to stay? Absolutely. I mean, there's so many people out there, young people working. You get, uh, you know, older chaps who've just been divorced. You've just got this whole host of people who are looking for rooms to rent. And if you can provide them what they're looking for in the right location with the right demand, then you're going to be absolutely smashing it. So I would say that strategies don't die, they just stop working everywhere for everyone, and they become more niche and require more skills. And I think that's really key. So, when HMOs first started out, like anyone who opened any old HMO was successful. Same with serviced accommodation. You'd just open up any old serviced accommodation and it would work. But now that's not the case. It's a really you've got a lot of competition, but we mustn't be frightened of competition. But we've got to make sure that we are competitive with that competition. So, I mean, I've seen it so many times in serviced accommodation. In one place, you'll have exactly the same product. So, exactly the same, let's say, 2-bed flat that's doing really well. And the next door town, for whatever reason, it's doing really badly. who has done their due diligence. So I would say fundamentals win fights. So those should be your focus first and foremost. So, how do successful investors really think? Hmm. So I think there's just some key mindset differences. And some of those start with asking really specific questions and not general ones. So if we were to ask a general question like, is HMR or are HMOs dead? Then I think the successful investors would start asking, well, what do the numbers look like on a 6 bed compared to a 9 bed in this postcode at this current room rate? What are the industries that are opening up in this area? What are the demographics? So many more specific questions which enable you to understand rather than having that complete, oh, it doesn't work. Because guess what? In some areas, like I know we've got a town near us where it was massive HMOs for students. And then guess what? The university built their own accommodation. And there was certainly some pain for a while, but had those people done their due diligence and found multiple industries in that area, they could have perhaps pivoted, but a lot of them literally just went in with that one trick pony, just student accommodation. Okay. And that can work for a while, but you have to be prepared that things might change. So it's like any business, if all your eggs are in just one or two baskets, that can be dangerous. And that's pretty obvious. If you're ready to take your property journey to the next level, check out my Property Success Mindset Formula course on Udemy. Inside, you'll discover actionable strategies and exercises designed to shift your thinking, boost your confidence, and help you navigate property challenges with clarity. Whether you're just starting out or looking to break through to a new level, this course delivers the mindset tools professional investors use every day. Visit the link in the show notes to unlock your property potential. And remember, your biggest asset is not just your portfolio, but the way you think. What do successful investors think about regulations? Well, they actually think of them as regulations as like a filter. So, regulation pushes out those tired, non compliant landlords and actually create room for new, hungry professional operators. And that's what we see. You know, Gone are the days of people being able to just buy a property and go by the seat of their pants. I'm not sure if that's the correct word, but you have to have that due diligence. You have to understand. I mean, you've got places like the RN the National Landlords Residential Association, and they're amazing. They've got so many resources. They've got meetings around the country. They help and support landlords to do it correctly, to do it well. So I just think nowadays there's no excuses not to be able to do it, and it's cheap. It's not an expensive way to obviously be compliant and keep your tenants safe and happy. So, what's another thing that successful investors do? They focus on the controllables. And that's obviously analyzing your deals, having a quality product, building great relationships, building great systems, and not relying on, the Bank of England headlines for that day. So can you start to see how we can really behave and think like successful investors? So this is a couple of great quotes here. Roy T. Bennett. Dreams don't work unless you take action. The surest way to make your dreams come true is to live them. Oh my gosh, I absolutely love that. I've got a few quotes I'm going to say. Benjamin Franklin said, Well done is better than well said. Oh, I really love that one. I'm going to repeat it. Well done is better than well said. And the last one here is Pablo Picasso. Action is the foundational key to all success. So we can all like jump into the mosh pit and go, property's dead. Blah. But if property is dead, headline gets more of your time than running your numbers, doing your due diligence, going to viewings, doing networking events, then you are choosing well said over well done. So really think about, are you that person listening to hours and hours each week of doom content, bad news? Compare how many hours you've listened to the news to how many hours you've worked on your property business. And compare that to other people who are literally spending their lunch hour, spending their weekends viewing, talking to agents, running figures. And I'm not saying you have to be a real expert, but running figures and talking at networking events to really successful investors and asking them, am I doing this right? Have I missed anything? What else could I look at? And some people, a solid, boring buy to let is what they're looking for. It's not for everyone, but it's certainly not dead. So it's all about sort of practically building your own property ecosystem. So, what does that look like? So it really is all about the data, the people, the systems, your own personal rules. And that means that you will no longer, if you keep control of those controllables, you're not going to be punched in the face by these crazy headlines that are going on. And just remember what those headlines are there for. It's to create fear. It's to stop you moving forward, or it's to get you to buy a course. So let's go through those in creating your ecosystem. So let's look at data. There's so many free resources. There's so many paid for resources who can help you and guide you to find right data. So local comparables, rents, room rates, occupancy data, HMO, licensing maps, Article 4, demand side signals. So all of these things are so key, and you can get them for free, you can pay for them, but we've got incredible resources. You've got Rightmove, you've got Zoopla, you've got Property Filter, Property Engine, you've got so many property data. I mean, the list is just endless. You've got people to talk to, people who have been there and done it, who, oh my gosh, I can't believe, I don't know about anyone else, but I can't believe how generous people are in the property industry in just helping. Like, you go to any networking event, and even if you've got an HMO next door to each other, oh, have you had any problems with this particular council? Yeah, I did actually. What did you do to solve it? Oh, I did this, this, and this. People are so generous with their time, and, take advantage of that, because as long as you're slightly ahead of somebody else, you could equally help other people to grow their journey as well. So this is a quote by Robert Collier. Begin to free yourself at once by doing all that is possible with the means you have. And as you proceed in this spirit, the way will open for you to do more. And I love that, because I always find, like, when I look back, when I very first started in property and my first networking event, oh my God, I mean, just everything about it was frightening. I was terrified to go in there. I didn't know what to say. I had no experience. They were doing all these numbers up on the stage. I had no idea, but I kept going. And that's what people do. each time in the next networking event, guess what? I was a little bit better. I at least understood some of the acronyms. All of these things helped me move along. I found friendly faces that I was able to go and run over and seek refuge with. But these things, we are constantly growing. And as long as you keep allowing yourself to grow, you will grow. So that was data. So the next, people. So again, I talked about networking. People have great power teams. Like, who are your peers using? Who seems to be successful? Who are the brokers that are doing really well for HMOs? Who are the brokers that are doing really well for serviced accommodation? Make sure you do your stress testing. Make sure you are doing an understanding with your broker what might work. Look at your letting agents, your management agents. I mean, I've been through a few, but I work collaboratively with them. If you're always there blaming them for things going wrong, maybe you should look at yourself. Because management is challenging and we can all come up with new ideas, to understand your tenants, your guests, what the demand is. Have you missed something that's happening in the town? So work with people. And again, like I mentioned, look at other landlords, investors in your area. Look at Facebook groups, look at WhatsApp groups, whatever it takes, get into them. Because I think that, a single conversation with a fantastic management agent in your target town is worth so much more than a few YouTube videos. Next one is systems. So this systems can be so many things, but look at the way you are sourcing your deals. And not if you're just a sourcer, but we all have to source deals. So how many viewings are you putting in a month? Are you doing a month? How many offers are you putting in? How many deals are you analyzing? I really like to do a huge amount of upfront analysis before I even go and visit a property. How do you systemize it? How do you look at it? Do you just go to Rightmove, or do you have a system like Property Filter who helps you to get the motivated sellers? And these are all really key. Look at your deal analyzer sheet and look at different interest rates. Interest rates can change. So make sure you're really understanding where your stress test will work. And look at compliance. Look at the people who can help you be compliant. I talked about the National Landlords National Landlords Residential Association. I think I've got that right. I'll put a link in the show notes. They're incredible for helping you with compliance. You can do courses. I mean, this is such an amazing resource. So the strategy that's just fundamentally sound will eventually win. Okay. So it's not guesswork. It's not hope. It's the strategies that you have literally done your due diligence and are fundamentally right and correct for you, your area, wherever it is. And then the final one is your personal rules. So that can be anything from what time you get up, how you conduct yourself, but equally, it's what is your minimum cash flow per unit? What's your minimum yield? What cash buffer do you require? What's your maximum minimum stress test? And all of us are different. Some people are happy with a 3 to 5% return. Other people want 20%. Nobody is right or wrong. It's just whatever's right for your situation. And if you keep within your rules that work for you, fantastic. That's great. Um, and it might be rules of things that you don't do. I don't do, for instance, it might be I don't do SA in city centres. I only do them, around massive contractor areas. Or it might be I don't like doing HMOs in student towns. There's nothing wrong with that. It's whatever works for you. And again, as long as you've done your due diligence, then it's really, really going to work. So Confucius said, when it is obvious that the goals cannot be reached, Don't adjust the goals, adjust the action steps. Very sensible man. So remember, it is all about due diligence rather than doom scrolling. So, the more doom scrolling you do, and we've all sat there, haven't we? Something pops up and it's like, oh, I'll read that. Because even if you don't listen to the news, some terrible thing crops up. You can't help but having a look. But are you looking then for an hour? Are you just consuming more and more content about, property crashes, horrific regulations, end of property? If you are, you just got to let it go, because it makes us feel busy. It makes us feel that we're being informed, but it stops us from moving forward. So doing your due diligence. So, you know, actually understanding the renters' rights bill, following people that are really, really great. I'm gonna put a few links to a couple of other fantastic people who just concentrate on these areas. And you can learn. They basically read the whole bill and just give you what you need to know and understand. And then obviously if you want to work with a great letting agent, all of these people can help you. And it's running the numbers on those properties for the mortgage rates that are happening and understanding that they may change. So looking at that, you know, looking at, viewings and asking agents those kind of blunt questions about demand, voids, but don't believe just one, and always compare that to successful investors. I spoke to a letting agent, they said this, that, and the other. Would you agree with that? We need to go and talk to the people who are doing it and who are successful. So Dale Carnegie said, inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. W. Clement Stone, oh my gosh, he is one of my absolute favorite authors. Thinking will not overcome fear, but action will. So let's create this kind of framework. Every time you hear these sensational claims, think, what is underlying this rule or information? What can I specifically ask or understand about that? And go and find out, find a source, find somebody who's experienced, somebody who knows. And then you can decide, is this going to kill my strategy? Or does it mean I just maybe have to change a bit? Maybe I need to put some new systems in. Maybe I need to level up. Or maybe I choose that, yeah, I don't want to be in that strategy anymore. And again, that's perfectly fine. People change, things change. So most people stop at step one. And it's the people who are building fantastic property businesses that keep moving on, that take step two, take step three, take step four, and keep going. So I want you guys to take a 30-day challenge. Okay. So I hope you must let me know how it goes. For the next 30 days, if at any time you're on social media or the news crops up and it says, some massively sensational headline about property, okay, please don't click it. At that moment, pick up the phone and book a viewing. Open a spreadsheet and do some analysis. Call a successful property investor, okay? And really try and understand and retrain your brain into knowing what is real and what is just absolutely massively fear mongering you. So do let me know how it goes and let me know if you can start drowning out that information because I barely notice it. Yeah, I want to keep up to date with information, but I do it in a sensible, level-headed way. And I choose where I hear it from. So here are some final quotes. Abraham Maslow, you will either step forward into growth or you will step back into safety. Oh, that's a scary one, isn't it? Or Carrie Fisher said, stay afraid, but do it anyway. What's important is the action. You don't have to wait to be confident. So just do remember that the people who win in this market are not the ones who guessed the headlines were right. They were the ones who stayed and who worked on the fundamentals, and they built their own property ecosystem and they kept taking action. So, how was that, guys? So, today we literally have poured our way through how to ignore property doom porn and actually succeed in property. And as always, please remember that property success isn't just about what you do, it really is about how you think. And when you combine a strong strategy with that unstoppable mindset, there's no limit to what we can achieve. So do reflect on today's episode and think about what actions are you going to take? Are you going to do that 30 days, not listening to the doom and gloom? Are you going to put more systems into place? What is it? Let me know. And if this episode has helped you see that ignoring doom porn and focusing on fundamentals will give you that real edge in property, I would say the perfect next step to deepen your confidence, especially in your own decision making, is to go and listen to episode 14, Decision Making for Property Investors. And in that episode, I break down how to stop second guessing yourself, how to choose a strategy that actually fits you, and how to make clear, confident decisions even when the market feels noisy and uncertain. So, if you're ready to spend less time consuming headlines and more time backing your own judgment, then episode 14 will really help you make and build that decision making muscle. So, as always, if you know anyone struggling on their property journey, please do share this episode. It can be a real game changer. And it may be something that they really need. And the more people that we help, actually, the greater our own wealth is in every sense of the word. And I just love growing this community and really growing the potential that we all have to succeed together. And as always, your mindset is your greatest property. Keep building it.